Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk about something, and I'm sorry if you can hear that noise because I have some toys with me, and I wanted to show you these toys. Um, okay, let me just close this. Hold on, hold on. So, the topic that I'm going to talk about today is reinforcement. And how do you get all of your reinforcement? You get your reinforcement by all these little toys that I have over here, and that's how we usually get all of our reinforcement. So I just bought a whole bunch of toys, bubbles, like our balls, um, some Play-Doh, um, and I don't know. I'm an old school person. I don't know if you guys remember this, but this was something that was there when we were, you know, younger, growing up, and then maybe something, which is like a toy. So these are just some things I had brought, to give you guys examples, and they just started playing. So with that being said, we're going to talk about reinforcement, and there's a little bit of misconception that goes along with reinforcement, and so what I wanted to talk about was that how does reinforcement work with ABA, what are the principles of ABA, and how do we work with it? Because a lot of the people, they ask me a question, please tell me you are not that BCBA who gives a candy or a piece of chocolate or an M&M for every time you are making my child do what you want them to do. And I'm like, oh my god, that is such a big misconception. So what this means is that a lot of our people or a lot of our parents, they have a lot of misconceptions about ABA. So I wanted to clarify a couple of things to you, and because of that, I brought all these toys over here because I'm like, hey, you know what? If we're going to talk about reinforcement, I want to make this session fun for the parents as well as for the therapists, so that the therapists also have a lot of fun with me. All right. With that being said, let's just talk about reinforcement because I think I'm having too much fun over here. So now, what is reinforcement? Reinforcement is a stimulus in our language, in the language of BCBA, which it depends on the response of the child or the response of the client that we are working with, which increases the future probability of the behavior. And this means is that anything that we do with the child, and then we reinforce that behavior. So for example, I have a child, and I ask the child that you know um, do this, so he does this, and then I give them some bubbles. Good job, really good. And so now the child looks at me and he says, oh my goodness, I'm having so much fun with this person, I'm going to do this again. So again, when I ask the child, hey, you know what, Johnny, do this, and the child does this, what happens? I'm going to blow the bubbles for him. So that is where the reinforcement starts from, not what reinforcement actually all entails, because reinforcement gets really, really complicated as we go along the way. But reinforcement in ABA starts with um, it depends on the response. Anything that increases the future frequency of the behavior is called as reinforcement. Now, the key to reinforcement is the future increase in the behavior. Okay, so now basically what happens is that everything happens with motivation. So once there is a motivation in a child to do something, you are going to be able to make anything reinforcing for a child. And once you make anything reinforcing for a child is going to be able to work for that reinforcing item. Now, reinforcements are some things that work around the motivation of a child. Reinforcements are something in which the relationship between what happened before, what is the behavior, and what is the consequence is extremely important. So there's a three term that comes along with it. But then there is also another really important factor that we miss sometimes, and that is motivation. How do we build those motivations in the children? That is so critical and so important, right? Now, how do we do that? So, I when I became a BCBA, I was working under a really, really great BCBA. I miss her so much. She's not even in Chicago anymore. And she used to tell me that, Juhi, remember, reinforcement is not what you give the child. So if I'm sitting at this table and I tell you, hey, do this, touch your nose, and you go ahead and touch your nose like this, and I'm like, here you go. Do you think you want that ball? Do you think that even though I have, like, this ball opens up and there are like 3 different balls in here, I'm going to take it? No, I don't want it. It's fine. It's just a ball. What am I going to do with it, right? I don't want it the next time. I don't want to work for it, right? But if I say, touch nose, and you touch my nose, and I'm like, oh my goodness, look at this ball. This has so much fun. You can open it. You can play with it. The child is going to have more fun with it through you. So you are building those motivations for the child so that the child is able to have fun through you. You are the key to the motivation for that child. And you are supposed to build those motivations up for the child so that the reinforcement is reinforcing for the child. Okay, so now there are different kind of motivations. There are different kind of reinforcers that we work around and we use. Now there is something that is called as establishing, which means that it establishes. So I'm going to give you an example over here. For example, if you are hungry, right, you're going to go to the fridge, you're going to go get something to eat. But if you're not hungry, you're not going to go and get something to eat, right? So if you are hungry and if somebody offers you lunch and a meeting, you'll be more than happy to go for that meeting. But if you're not hungry and somebody asks you to go for lunch, you're not going to be motivated to go to that meeting, right? So as a human being, we all work around reinforcement and our motivations, okay? The next thing that I want to talk about is that people have questions like, does the child have to know that the reinforcement procedure is happening for it to work? No, it's just an automatic effect. The more you reinforce a child, the more the behaviors increase of the child. The only thing that is so critical and so important for reinforcement to work is the immediacy. Never take that immediacy away. So that immediacy of reinforcement is so critical and so important that you have to make sure that reinforcement is happening immediately. There is no delay in reinforcement. So for example, I have asked you to do this and you do this, and I'm like, great job, here you go, this is your toy, let's go around and play with it, and the child is going to have fun with it, right? I gotta turn it off. All right, and then I'm like, that was my FR1 schedule, which is a fixed ratio 1 schedule. Then I go to the next one, which is, hey Johnny, you did such a good job, now do this, this, and this. And so now I've asked him to do 3 responses. Now, because I'm building his repertoire up that he does not need reinforcement for the first response, I have done 3 responses. I'm asking him to do 3 responses, and then I'm going to reinforce him. So now after 3 responses, I am going to be like, yay, good job. Look at this. This is so cool. All right, it's your turn. You can have it. So then you let them play with it. So this is how you are going to increase your reinforcement, giving it to the children, fading it out so that you don't have to make the child only work for these artificial reinforcements. Now, what are the kind of reinforcements that are present? There are edible reinforcers, which are food. There is sensory reinforcers, which are massage and tickles. There are tangible reinforcers, which are trinket, toys, activity reinforcers, social reinforcers, which is high five, good job, you are a hero, you're a superhero. So those are all social reinforcements. Now, what is the problem with delayed to reinforcement? The problem with delayed reinforcement is that if you ask a child, do this, and the child does do this, and you don't give them reinforcement, the child is looking at you like, where's my reinforcement? Wasn't I supposed to be doing this non-functional activity at the table for reinforcement? So that becomes very critical at that time, because what happens is that if any other behavior, so for example, you've asked the child, do this, he does this, and then after that you get busy into something else, and then the child goes and he throws this item on the floor. Now what happened? He lost his reinforcement for that adaptive behavior that he did earlier, and he got punished. So now he's learned that he is not going to get reinforcement, although he tried hard for the previous behavior. Okay, so this is that reinforcement should be immediate. Reinforcement should be not delayed, and there are many different kind of reinforcers that you can use. Now, what is the difference between bribing and reinforcement? That's something that I wanted to clarify. The difference between bribing and reinforcement is something that increases, right? So for example, I've asked Johnny, hey Johnny, do this, and Johnny does this, and I say, okay, good job, here is your Play-Doh, let's play with this Play-Doh, let's just build up something with this Play-Doh and play with it. And Johnny gets it, he plays with it. Next time I tell him, hey Johnny, do this, he's going to do it with no problem. It will increase his future frequency of behavior. I'm giving you simple examples. Now, if you ask Johnny, do this, and Johnny doesn't do it, and you say, hey Johnny, please do it. Hey, you know what? Do this. If you do this, I'm going to give you this. If you do this, I'm going to give you this. This is bribing. So if the child does not indulge in the behavior you want them to indulge, and you are asking them to do it because you're going to give them this, that's bribing. But if they do it and independently and you give it to them, that's reinforcement. So there's a difference between bribing, and there's a difference between reinforcement, and we always need to make that distinction between bribing and reinforcement. Identifying reinforcers. So it's very important to identify reinforcers. How do you identify reinforcers? You can identify reinforcers by observing a child in a naturalistic environment and seeing that what are the things that the child likes in his environment, right? What are the things that he's working for? What are the things that he's going to go and approach? What are the things that he's going to contact? And what are the things that he's going to engage in? So for example, I have all these toys sitting in front of me. Which toy am I going to go and I am going to approach? So I am approaching this one. I am also contacting it. Yeah, I like it. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to turn it around, and I am also engaging in it. So I am having approach, contact, and engagement. So that's how I come to know that this child really likes this thing. The second way of doing it is making an environment in which you're going to leave the child and see what are the things he likes. Another option is you're going to ask other people who live around that child that what are the things the child likes during the regular day. And the last one is trial-based, which is usually done at a clinic, and only clinicians can do it, which are the behavior analysts or the therapists. And in that scenario, what happens is that you are the one who is going to bring different items in front of the child, which could be like a single thing, a multiple paired thing, or a multiple thing, and then you make the child choose between them, and you see what are the things that the child goes and prefers for. So this was a very, very small version of like how to do a preference assessment. But our clinicians, they are the ones who are trained in how to do a stimulus preference assessment. Now, in order to test if the stimuli that the child chose will work as a reinforcer, because you want to make sure that the things that you have already identified are going to work as a reinforcer or not, you want to test them. In order to test them, you're going to have to give those items to the child at the time the child is asked to do something. So when you ask the child to do something, or you put a demand on them, which is, hey, touch your toes, touch your head, hey, what letter is this? What is this? Or any demand that you put on them, and they do it, and then you blow bubbles for them, or you give them their favorite item, They play with it, they have fun with it, and then the next time again when you ask them to do it, they do it without prompts, happily. That means that that stimuli that you chose was a reinforcer for them. So this is very technical, and you guys, I just wanted to do this so that you understand that how do we work with ABA and what are reinforcers, right? So please keep this in mind. Ask me if there are any questions. Stay safe and stay healthy. And please reach out to me for any questions. Have a wonderful day.